What if your faith marked you for death and the world watched as your community was systematically destroyed? In April 1655, this nightmare became reality for thousands of people living peacefully in the Alpine valleys of northern Italy. The Piedmont region of the Duchy of Savoy, nestled in the Italian Alps near modern-day Turin, became the stage for one of the most brutal religious persecutions of the 17th century. The victims were the Waldensians, a Protestant Christian group whose roots stretched back over 400 years before the massacre that would bear their name. The Waldensians traced their origins to Peter Waldo, a wealthy merchant from Lyon who, in the 1170s, gave away his possessions and began preaching a return to simple biblical Christianity. His followers faced persecution from the Catholic Church for centuries, eventually finding refuge in the remote valleys of the Cottian Alps. By 1655, approximately 15,000 Waldensians lived in these mountain communities, speaking a unique Franco-Provençal dialect and maintaining their distinct religious practices. These alpine valleys had provided safety for generations. The Waldensians were skilled farmers and craftsmen, transforming steep mountainsides into productive terraced fields. They lived quietly, attending their own churches and raising their families according to their beliefs. But their Protestant faith made them a target in an era when religious uniformity was considered essential to political stability. Charles Emmanuel II, Duke of Savoy, ruled these territories under the influence of his mother, the Regent Christine of France, and powerful Catholic advisors. In January 1655, the Duke issued an edict demanding that all Waldensians living in the lower valleys convert to Catholicism or leave their homes within 20 days. The order affected the most prosperous Waldensian communities, forcing families to abandon everything they'd built. Many Waldensians reluctantly retreated higher into the mountains, crowding into the upper valleys where winter still gripped the landscape. They hoped this compliance would satisfy the Duke's demands. They were tragically wrong. On April 24, 1655, the day after Easter, an army of French and Piedmontese soldiers, accompanied by Irish mercenaries and local militia, descended upon the Waldensian valleys. What followed was not a military campaign, but a systematic massacre of civilians. The attack came without warning, targeting villages still celebrating the Easter holy days. The violence was horrific and indiscriminate. Soldiers killed entire families in their homes, showing no mercy to women, children, or the elderly. Eyewitness accounts describe unspeakable atrocities. Children were thrown from cliffs or dashed against rocks. Pregnant women were killed alongside their unborn children. People were burned alive in their homes or churches where they'd sought sanctuary. One particularly detailed account comes from John Leger, a Waldensian pastor who survived and later documented the massacre. He wrote that soldiers tied prisoners to trees and used them for target practice. Others were dragged through streets until they died from their injuries. The brutality seemed designed not just to kill, but to terrorize and demoralize the entire community. The village of La Torre became a focal point of horror. Soldiers herded dozens of villagers into a church, promising them safety if they converted. When they refused, the church was set ablaze with everyone inside. Those who tried to escape through windows were cut down by waiting soldiers. Similar scenes played out across multiple villages throughout the valleys. Historians estimate that between 2,000 and 3,000 Waldensians died during the initial week of violence. Thousands more fled into the high mountains, where many perished from exposure, starvation, or subsequent attacks. Entire communities ceased to exist. Centuries of culture and history were nearly erased in a matter of days. News of the massacre spread slowly across Europe, but when it did, the reaction was swift and widespread. Protestant nations were outraged. The scale and brutality of the violence shocked even some Catholic observers who believed the response had gone too far. Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of England, took particular interest in the Waldensian cause. He organized a massive relief effort, personally donating £2,000 and encouraging churches throughout England to collect funds. The famous poet John Milton, serving as Cromwell's Latin secretary, composed a sonnet titled "On the Late Massacre in Piedmont" that begins with the powerful line, "Avenge, O Lord, thy slaughtered saints, whose bones lie scattered on the Alpine mountains cold. Cromwell also engaged in aggressive diplomacy, sending the poet Samuel Morland as his envoy to various European courts. Morland traveled throughout the continent, gathering testimonies and building international pressure against the Duke of Savoy. His efforts resulted in a published collection of eyewitness accounts that documented the atrocities in detail, ensuring the massacre couldn't be hidden or denied. France's Cardinal Mazarin, despite his Catholic loyalties, recognized the diplomatic disaster unfolding. The massacre threatened to unite Protestant nations against Catholic powers at a delicate moment in European politics. He pressured the Duke of Savoy to end the violence and negotiate. By August 1655, international pressure forced the Duke to sign the Treaty of Pinerolo. This agreement allowed surviving Waldensians to return to some of their valleys and practice their faith with certain restrictions. It was far from a complete restoration of their rights, but it prevented total annihilation. The Waldensian Massacre had profound consequences beyond the immediate death toll. It demonstrated the power of international public opinion in an age before modern media. Protestant nations had coordinated diplomatic and financial responses, creating an early example of humanitarian intervention. The event also influenced developing ideas about religious tolerance. Philosophers and political thinkers across Europe cited the massacre as evidence that religious persecution was both morally wrong and politically destabilizing. These arguments would later contribute to Enlightenment thinking about individual rights and freedom of conscience. The Waldensian community survived, though forever changed. They rebuilt their churches and communities, maintaining their faith despite continued pressures. In 1848, nearly 200 years after the massacre, the Waldensians finally received full civil rights in the Kingdom of Sardinia. Today, the Waldensian Church continues to exist, with congregations in Italy, South America, and elsewhere, keeping alive the memory of those who died for their beliefs. The massacre also entered Protestant historical memory as a defining moment of martyrdom. It appeared in martyrologies and history books, reminding subsequent generations of the price their ancestors paid for religious freedom. The story influenced Protestant identity and solidarity for centuries. When we consider the Great Waldensian Massacre today, we're confronted with uncomfortable questions about faith, power, and human cruelty. How could soldiers commit such atrocities against peaceful neighbors? What transforms ordinary people into instruments of mass violence? And perhaps most importantly, how do we ensure that religious differences never again justify such brutality? The scattered bones in those Alpine valleys remind us that tolerance isn't just a pleasant ideal, but a necessity for human civilization itself.